up next, we're going to have a panel discussion about splicing. So we've got Justin from Correlate, being Bastion from the Song team, and Justin here from Voltage is going to be our, I guess, discussion leader and talk about splicing, etc. I think that we're going to go ahead and, if you need like 2 minutes while we get set up, and then we should get going here in a minute. Okay, guys, give it a warm welcome to our three panelists, and we'll get
So I'm Justin Litchfield. I'm at Voltage. I love splicing. I've been talking about splicing. I haven't done splicing. But we've got here Dusty, Bastion. I could give some introduction for this, but less about Bastion. So why don't we, you just talk to us a little bit, like introduce yourself, and yeah, talk to the crowd for a minute.
Sure. So is that working? Yeah, good enough. So I'm Bastien. I've been working on the Lightning specification for 5 years at the Async team and on our implementation there. And we also have a wallet, Phoenix. We actually tried doing what we wanted Phoenix to be, but we tried doing it 5 years ago with Eclair Mobile, and it was terrible. And we had to make a lot of improvements to the specification to eventually do Phoenix Wallet. And one of the things that we really wanted to add that is really important for Wallet is actually splicing. And we are right in the middle of that right now because we are pushing an upgrade to Phoenix that moves to start using splicing. So that's something you will be able to actually touch and feel if you use Phoenix Wallet. And it's going to make your life easier, and you're not even going to notice it. That's the goal. You don't have to notice it, don't know that it's happening, but everything just works better than before.
Yeah, that's the magic of splicing, right? You don't even see it, it's just gone. I'm Dusty Damon. I go by Dusty Damon. I've been working on splicing for a while now with the spec, and together we've both brought Splice into 2 locations of Lightning, which makes it officially part of the Lightning spec. And we're in the final stages of that. I couldn't be happier about it.
Awesome. Are they compatible? So these are 2 different.
Asterisks. Yeah, they're designed to be compatible, but we haven't done the what's called interop test yet. In which case, we'll see how compatible we actually are, and then fix the area we are.
Yeah, honestly, I think we're really close because most of the important stuff is already compatible. It's only a few details like finishing touches that we need to do. It's something that has evolved a lot because splicing is one of the things that we said we would do in 2019, or even it has been discussed since 2018 or even before. It looks simple actually because maybe let's just say what splicing is.
Right. Yeah.
So splicing in a nutshell is actually really simple. You have this channel. It has a fixed size because you created a transaction, a funding transaction on chain, and that has a fixed size. How do you make it grow or shrink? Without splicing, you don't have a choice. You just open another channel and close the previous one. So if you close a channel and open another one, that is 2 transactions. So maybe we can do better and we can close that channel, but open it again in the same transaction. And in a nutshell, that is splicing. So it looks really simple. So why did it take 6 years to build? Details.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, this is a simple project, and then like years later, you're like, it was not a simple project.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a long time. Absolutely. So what was hard? Can we dive into it a little bit?
God.
Tell me some of your battle.
Well, I think that there's a way to do splicing that would be really easy, which is that you just take the channel and you just freeze it for like a couple of hours until the splice confirms. If it ever confirms, it might be frozen forever, like asterisks. That would make splicing really easy. But the problem with doing it that way is your channel can't route payments while you're waiting for the splice to go through. And it's like, man, if we just didn't need that, it would have been way easier, but it turns out it's like really important that your channel works while you're splicing on it. So it's kind of like doing a repair on a plane while you're flying in the sky, sort of thing. And part of the reason for that is, 1, it's just better, but 2, like if you look at what channels people will need to splice the most, they're the more valuable channels. And if you're a large routing node pumping tons of transactions through a channel, you're not going to close that channel until your business for X period of time. You need to have it running at all. So one of the bigger use cases for splicing wouldn't even get used if we didn't do it the hard way, which is, we're adding wings onto a plane in the sky, essentially.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the other things that make it hard are, I don't know who thought that this talk at 1 p.m. about interactivity and non-interactivity. Anyone? Yeah, that the interactivity part is the hard part here, because you are, with splicing, what you are essentially doing is that both of you are creating a transaction collaboratively. That means you are both adding inputs and outputs to that transaction, which means you both need to verify a ton of stuff to make sure that the other guy is not trying to cheat, is not trying to do something that you're not supposed to. And it makes it hard. There are a lot of edge cases there that make it really hard. And the other thing that makes it hard, and that was the thing that delayed it the most, is the mempool. That there are details of the mempool that make everything Lightning complex, because you really need that transaction to be able to go through, otherwise you are ruining the security of the fund safety of everyone in that channel. And splicing actually introduces a new way of pinning transactions and potentially stealing funds if it's not done correctly. And unfortunately, the only fix for that is to wait for work that is happening at the policy level in Bitcoin, package relay, and B3 transaction. And that is going to fix all the issues we have, most of the issues we have for Lightning and for splicing. So what took a long time was discussions between L1 and L2 to make sure that what was being built on L1 was actually fixing all the issues we had on L2.
Yeah, so pitch your local core dev on getting package relay and
Yeah, where were they? Yeah, and that's, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and one more hard thing I remember while we're talking about it, which is that, like, part of the problem is all of the code bases for Lightning, they're a little mature now, they're kind of old. They all been built around this concept that a channel is created and exists until it goes away. And with splicing, you have to, like, refactor all of the code that makes an assumption to be like, wait, no, this channel could actually be 2 channels, actually 3 for the RBF, all at the same time, and then process it all. So it ends up being you have to like go through it and undo a lot of assumptions in the code, and then that could be a very like surgical process.
Yeah, that was a massive refactoring, and a very dangerous one, because you are touching the dangerous parts where if you mess something up and you don't handle false closing correctly or revoke close on an old RBF attempt, you can potentially lose funds. So you want to make sure that you've got this right and there's no security bug in that. And this is far from being trivial.
Yeah, so sorry, summary. But it's done, assholes.
Yeah, cool. And there's a question that I'd love to ask that's hard to ask because your implementations are so different, like at the base layer. But it's like, how did you approach it differently from each other? You know, can we do a verbal git diff of these 2 different
We should like review each other's splicing code. I don't know. I mean, do you know?
Yeah, the way we approached it was first what you mentioned, changing a lot of refactoring to be able to handle the fact that you potentially have multiple commitments at the same time that are valid, and realizing that the main issue with that is handling how you close channel and how you force close channel and check that the other guy is not cheating. That was what took a long time. And then building the actual splicing part on top of that. The transaction thing was already built for dual funding mostly, so that part was somewhat easy. The thing we haven't done yet in Eclair is the gossip part, so there may be dragons there, so maybe you can talk about them, but yeah, I think that's it's mostly that big refactoring to be able to handle multiple commitments that are valid at the same time, but don't have actually the same channel capacity.
Yeah, well, taking on the gossip thing, like gossip is kind of weird because like what you want to do with Lightning and gossip, to explain, is it's the communication network for Lightning. We call it gossip, so all the nodes talk to each other. And what you want to do is just splice the channel and then just gossip, hey, I like changed this channel, it's over here now. But you can't really do that because there'll be nodes that don't understand splicing that will be around for who knows how long. So what we have to do is say, okay, actually this is a channel open, asterisk, it's a splice. So the old nodes see it as a channel, close and open, and they can remain compatible. That's part of what makes gossip complicated. But like, I guess if you want to go back to how this is hard. Like one of the, splicing is my first like big Lightning protocol project. And oh my God, did I pick a hard one. Because in order to get splicing going, you have to, I was like, okay, I can build Bitcoin transactions, I'm gonna do that. Let's build a transaction, submit it, whatever. But you also have to understand how that affects gossip, how that affects HTLCs, how that affects commitment signatures. Essentially, all of the Lightning implementation is touched by it. So it's like a poison pill where now you're gonna learn all of Lightning to do anything, which has been great, but it was a fun, hard, difficult challenge. I think I didn't even answer your question, just said it was hard to get through.
Yeah, something I like to come back on about the gossip. The reason gossip is hard is we use that gossip to make sure that everyone knows what the graph looks like, so that when you try to send a payment, you know where the channels are, what their sizes are, so that you can run just a pathfinding algorithm on that. But whenever you do Splice, so you're a node, you have this graph. There are two ways to keep it updated. People will tell you, this is a new channel, please add it to your graph. This is okay, you just verify that on-chain there is an unspent output that has that capacity, you add it to your graph. But how do you remove things from your graph? Because if channels get closed, you want to remove that from your graph, because if you try to send payment through that, there's no channel anymore. So this is going to fail, you're going to get an error, you're going to have to retry, and it makes the payments less reliable. So right now, the way you do that is that you just watch on-chain all these outputs, and when you see that they are spent, that means the channel is closed. So that's the issue with splicing. Splicing is actually doing the same thing as closing the channel. So everyone will think that your channel is closed, and will stop sending payments through it, because all the nodes that have not updated to understand splicing will have that behavior. So you are actually still losing fee revenue because people will think that your channel is not there anymore. So we need to find a good solution to that. We currently have a not good solution to that, which is just wait for 12 blocks when you see a channel closing, so that maybe, hopefully, someone sends you an announcement that this is actually a new channel, but this is not very satisfying. So I hope we can do better, but I'm not sure.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I think Core does 6, like that same thing, but for 6. But sometimes if the message gets swallowed, like it drops on gossip messages.
Yeah, I think the idea for 12 is just double 6.
Yeah.
Perfect math.
Like 256. What is this random number here for?
Right.
I don't understand that.
Because I think in general, like Lightning, just to explain a little bit to the audience, we generally use 6 blocks as the standard. Like if the channel opens, 6 blocks go by, we count that as real. Vaguely, if it closes 6 blocks, we count that as real. And with splicing, we're opening and closing at the same time, so we just the idea is just to double it to pad things. And, we got to work through all the details on that. Good up mailing this post. We got to need more of those, I think.
So you all are super talented engineers, right? And we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, and people build the skid aliases. I think were necessary. The dual funding. There's a lot of things that make this possible.
Oh, the skid aliases were really annoying in Splice next.
Oh yeah.
Because they kept merging in that code, and then my splicing code was also messing with the skids, and then I had to refactor constantly. Anyway, I keep going back to how it's hard.
Right. But I guess the question there is, you're just 2 people, and this feature is really important for everybody in the network. And it feels like we could, in the future, hopefully, apply more engineering resources. I wish we'd applied more before, or kind of talk about how you do is this building in a silo? Is this one of these things where, I just had to load the whole code base into my brain and then just slog through it? Or how can we build these sorts of things more effectively?
Well, I think there is the spec protocol process, right? The splicing spec is on the Bolt's GitHub, and we've been having conversations there about all the details. It's all kind of there. For a while, it was just sort of me and T-Bast, and no one else was talking to, it was crickets. But over time, there's been more and more people interacting with it, asking questions, poking holes, sort of thing. So the spec part, it is very public if you're looking in that particular spot. But you're asking how do we get more developers?
Yeah, let's get more people.
More
brains on it.
Yeah. Where's OpenSet? So we can find some ways to
More people looking at it is useful, but how do you define effective? Because building something like that, we are actually really building a protocol that people will build on top of. So making it work fast is definitely not the goal. Taking the time to let it stew basically for a while is really useful, because if you look at the difference between the early Splice proposal from 2018 and what we are getting now, there's almost nothing in common. The concept is still the same, but everything changed for the better, because now it's a tool that you can build on top. You can do splice contracts, you can batch splices, you can make it, you can do a lot of things with them that we didn't think about before, and just were added mostly because we let it stew for a while. We kept talking about it, thinking about it, talking about it to many people, and then some ideas came up, and that's not. I don't think that's something you can really speed up by having. You can speed it up a bit by having more people looking at it, but you don't want to rush it.
I think that's a good point because we're building a protocol. Like as the protocol gets used more in the future, if there's some like weird mistake we made in it, we're gonna be living with that problem for a long time. So I second that idea. It's good to sort of slow down and get it really right, and then once it reaches that line where okay, this is totally clean, then you can build upon it. So it's a good point.
And also something that's interesting is that all those mempool issues that we are talking about at the Bitcoin level, people knew for a while that we needed something like package relay in Bitcoin for a lot of reasons, but it took years before we really realized that Lightning was strongly affected by that, and that there were real potential issues with Lightning and actually any layer 2 protocol that builds on Bitcoin. And you need to actually work on that stuff for a long time before these things start making sense and you start seeing those issues that are more and more complex, harder and harder to attack, but still exist. So it's really, it really has to take time, basically. It's better if you have more people spending that time on it, but it really has to take a lot of time.
Yeah, and it sounds like with the packet relay stuff, it's something where we've known it was important for a long time, but until it becomes urgent and important, nobody's actually going to schedule it.
Yeah, that's as well.
I don't know how mempool people get stuff done. Can we ignite them to go faster? I don't know. I'm sure they're doing a very good job. I assume.
I think it was a bit like what you said. You said you started working on splicing. Maybe you didn't know what you were getting into.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing for packet relay. The people who knew that this was hard to build, so no one was working on it. And then Gloria came and they said, "Oh, look at this thing. This looks fun. Work on it." And she didn't know what she was getting into.
Like she didn't realize everyone's avoiding it because of how hard it was. She's like, "Oh, it's a high value project that no one's doing. I'll just do that."
What do you think about another way that I think about the network a lot and I'll discuss with people is what should the shape of the Lightning Network look like in a few years as far as like centrality, like nodes versus leaves versus core, and like where do things route and things like this. How do you, first of all, I'd love to hear your thoughts on like what a good graph topology looks like, but which is hard to say in words, right? It's a little bit easier to talk or draw, but then how splicing might affect this. Like, is this going to really?
I'm not sure splicing will affect this. The only thing that splicing will affect is that it will make everything more efficient because you don't need now, between pairs of nodes, you won't need to have many channels. You will only need to have a handful of them because the reason people have a lot of channels with the same peers is because you don't have a good way of making them grow or shrink. So people keep opening new channels and wait for the fee rate to be low before closing the old ones. But with splicing, you can just keep on increasing the size of one channel when you want to add capacity. And the good thing with that is that it makes closing more efficient because you have less channels that you need to talk about. So if you think of it just as in graph theory, it won't affect the number of vertices, but the number of edges will shrink while still allowing the same capacity in the network, which is a good thing because everything is then more efficient. Pathfinding is more efficient because you have less edges. Gossip is more efficient. So it's really a good thing, but I don't think it will affect the shape itself of the network. And I don't think our opinion on what the network should look like has any value, to be honest. But the only thing that has value is that people should be able to decide how to shape it. The technology should let people shape it however they want, like letting them easily open channel to anyone, so that no one gets to decide what the graph looks like. And if it becomes too centralized, people can still create a mesh around it and can still decide to route only in that mesh part of the network if they want to. So the important thing is that the technology lets the graph take any shape.
I have a spicy take. I think the graph is going to change where all of the best, most successful nodes are all using splicing, and the ones that aren't.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's about economic incentives because people don't realize it because it's not as clear cut as mining, but running a Lightning node is a highly competitive business because you're not going to be able to make a lot of money on fees because it's highly competitive. Anyone can come in and offer lower fees and burn their VC monies by doing it at a loss. So you will have to be very efficient at moving your liquidity around, and moving your liquidity around will always require an on-chain transaction. So if you have the best way of doing it with the smallest transaction possible, lowest fee possible, then you are at an advantage compared to the other nodes who don't use splicing and don't have these things. So you're going to be operating with less, paying less fees than them. So in the long run, you will take them out of business. So everyone will have to implement splicing because otherwise their cost will go up compared to the nodes that do.
Yeah, you don't like splicing, you have to do it.
Scaring them to get you to implement it.
I really love this analogy. It reminds me, over the last year, there was a lot of, you're going to get rich running a routing node. Like, it was such a big part of it. And that was deeply problematic. But I like this analogy to mining where it's like, yeah, sometimes it's real good and you can sell really expensive channels, but most of the time it's not, and maybe this capital gets better allocated.
There was another line that was related. Lightning is always going to be very cheap. That was also a lie, and it was called, even Rusty was saying in 2019, don't expect the fees to stay that low because they are way too low. People are just burning VC money on that. It cannot be a sustainable business if people are all operating at a loss, and that's not what we want. We want to find a good equilibrium where people can run nodes, offer services, and still have a viable business model. So you have to expect that the fees in Lightning are going to increase a bit, hopefully not too much. We are playing a lot with those models to find the right model where fees can create a viable business without impacting users too much, but they are definitely too low today. So expect that some of those fees will have to rise at some point.
What's also fun about the network is if you're around long, you run into these like random rich guys that are at Bitcoin, and they're like, I want to run a Lightning node, I don't want to learn anything, I'm just going to put a fuck ton of money in it and like win. And what ends up happening is people will do that, and then everyone else just steals their liquidity for really cheap, and then gets wealthier off them. And then there's this really cool effect of having a Lightning node where it's like being rich doesn't really help you. Like having more intelligent routing approaches, that's really where you win. Which is kind of a fun thing, whereas like most of the business world, especially around Silicon Valley, it's like hard to compete with the large piles of money. Like it's like doesn't matter what you gotta do it.
Even though there is still an advantage. If you have more liquidity, you're still at an advantage because you can be connected to many people and won't have to manage your liquidity that much. So there is still a barrier to entry, and we cannot do anything about that. That's life, that's economics. But we can still make the barrier to entry as small as possible so that anyone can come in with what they have and be competitive as possible in the network.
Yeah, you can just pick a clever alias and then everybody will open channels to you.
Oh my god, that works, doesn't it?
It definitely does. So, like, what's next? Is it like JIT splicing? Is JIT splicing a thing? Is it multi-party splicing? Like,
We already do JIT splicing.
Yeah, it is a thing. It's happening in Phoenix right now. It is a pain because mixing zero conf and splicing is actually a pain and creates potential bidding issues, but yeah.
Yeah, because I've had a heated argument with somebody a few days ago about like these new risks introduced by JIT splicing and stuff, like talking about like new risk profiles of these new operations and what are you learning from that?
That is hard because the main issue is that when you start that zero conf basically is hard. Zero conf is great for UX but really hard to code for because there are a lot of things that you cannot do. You cannot RBF a zero conf transaction, which means you always have to CPFP and then you get into multiple limits. So there are a lot of technical reasons why zero conf is annoying, but we don't really have a choice. People want to receive that money right now. So someone has to take that risk, and you'll have to find good ways of evaluating the risk you're taking and making sure you are not giving tools for the users to actually attack you when you are a liquidity provider, for example. But this is really important for UX because we don't want people to have to care that much about inbound liquidity because that's something you want your Lightning wallet to just look like Venmo or PayPal. It's just something where you send and receive money. Nobody on those apps is used to thinking about, oh, I'm limited in the amount I can receive. You are limited in the amount you can send because that's what money you have. But nobody wants to think about the fact that they're limited in the amount of money they can receive. So you have to make that very easy and transparent for the user to receive whatever they want with a cost that is as small as possible. But that is hard, and we don't know yet if you want to educate the users on the fact that incoming liquidity is a thing, or if we should try to hide it from everyone and just make it work.
Yeah, I think like you can kind of visualize it. You imagine, like, so you have your channel funding transaction right here, that's on chain, right? And then if you imagine a bunch of pending transactions, children coming off of it, you always have the commitment transaction, regular thing. You also have your splice coming off of it, which is going to be pending. And then it has the commitment transaction below that, right? So already doing a splice, we go from having, we went from having one funding transaction, now we have 3 pending ones below it, right? And now, let's say you want to do RBF, because everyone wants to do RBF and make our lives painful. You might do RBF.splice. The RBF.splice, you get to keep track of both versions of it. So now we have the funding transaction, commitment, 2 splices below that, both of their commitment transactions going with that. Now, if you want to start doing 0 comp splices, each of those splices can have a splice below it. And you could imagine trying to visualize that just starts breaking your brain really fast. And I think it's complicated.
And another thing, but one thing that splicing makes much better in the UX is that explaining to users how much they can receive when they have multiple channels is really hard, because if you have 2 channels and you're still able to receive 10,000 sats on each channel as a user, you think you can receive 20,000 sats. That would be the expected thing to tell the users, but actually no, because it depends on how the sender splits that. The sender has to know that they have to split the payment into 2 shards of 10,000 sats. So that's why without splicing, when you have multiple channels, you just cannot tell users how much they can receive without having to make an on-chain transactions. But with splicing, since there's only one channel, this time you can really start telling the user, oh, this is the amount you can receive entirely off-chain. And you can start visualizing it. And the way I like to visualize that is, instead of a channel, the channel is not a pipe anymore, it's actually a bucket. And that bucket has a fixed size, which is the size of your channel, and the water in it, for example, is the money that is on your side. So then you see that you can only add water until the bucket is full, and if you want to add more water, you need to grow the bucket. And splicing in is actually growing the size of the bucket. And sending money out is moving water out of your bucket. So we're trying to find ways of making this visual and not drawing a horrible bucket that users will like, but I'm not a designer, so someone will do that, and it will be intuitive for users, hopefully.
I think also worth adding with the JIT/0conf splices, what you're doing is the goal is to get one side assured that you have their money stolen, while the other side can still have it stolen, right? The idea is the LSP wants to protect themselves, and if you're a user receiving it, like, okay, it shows up in your phone right away, it'll take a while to actually be real, ends up in this pending state. There's no way to have a 0conf splice be confirmed for both sides. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
Right, that is a new risk. I love the bucket. Like, let's get some programmer art with buckets.
I love it, yeah. There's a game about a bucket, actually. You should get them to sponsor splicing. It's literally about a bucket. It's I forget what it's called. It's really Stanley's Parable, I think it is. Okay, no one's heard of it. It's a hilarious one again. Okay, well, we're back to splicing.
Okay,
What's your next
so
question?
splicing. Well, I guess it goes back to, I guess one of the driving things that kind of motivates it is trying to abstract away the channel thing from a lot of users. Like, can this really make this feel seamless? Is that kind of motivating it for you? Do you think realistically we can abstract channels away from wallets without making them custodial?
Somewhat, yes. But I'm still struggling to decide whether we can completely abstract it or we have to make the user visualize that thing so that they understand the code. Because the thing is more, not necessarily about abstracting the channel, but about making the cost predictable for the user. As long as they have something that's predictable, and they know that if they want to receive more than that amount, then it's going to cost some fee, then they can build something around it. But when costs are not predictable for the users, that's why you have issues and people just cannot build under uncertainty. So the goal is really to make those costs more predictable, and I think that splicing helps a lot here.
Questions from the audience? Does anybody else want to ask anything, please?
How frequently do you see splicing happening? Do you even need just in time? Or does it be infrequent, you can just wait for the confirmation?
I think I think there's like, yeah, so the question is how frequently do we see splicing happening? And then will it be mostly JIT? Is the question?
Wait, if it's infrequent, then you can just wait for the confirmation.
Yeah, so I think like there's two categories of what splicing solves, and one of them is the consumer side UX, which there's a lot of positive notes on, and the other side is like routing nodes. It's weird that one feature could help both of these people independently, but this one does. I think on the routing side, those are all going to be real confirmed slices. I doubt they're going to be any zero comp there. And I think it'll be like, which one will be more than the other? I don't know. I imagine routing nodes will do a lot more splicing by volume. But you know, maybe these consumer apps get really popular, there's more there. Maybe call it 50-50.
And another interesting fact about splicing, especially for routing nodes, there's this thing with LN penalty that your channel accumulates state, and people who run nodes see that their DB grows over time, because whenever you send or receive HTLCs, you have to keep information about them in case your counterparty tries to broadcast a previous state of the channel. That is an issue. That is the reason we don't have. That is the main reason we don't have watchtowers for Lightning today, because those watchtowers would have to keep an increasing, linearly increasing number of amount of data for channels. But when channels are old, have been there for a long time, they are also prioritized in pathfinding. So you really want to keep those channels open as long as possible. And what's interesting with splicing is that it lets you reset and forget all that past history. Because once you have spliced on a channel, it is still the same channel, but the other guy cannot cheat anymore by publishing a previous commitment. So you can delete from your database all the HTLC information you had before. So that's something that will make the requirements to run a node go down, because your database will stop increasing linearly. You will be able to remove some old information very frequently.
And that's where Splice is crazy. We started with just resizing channels, and now we solved our database problems. Like, how did that happen?
That's amazing.
And the collaborative spend thing. Right?
And collaborative spreads. Oh my god, yeah.
Put Dusty on everything, right?
Let's
Solve it all.
go. The collaborative spends mean like the interactive transaction
Or
stuff.
just like, you know, coin joining all the time by splicing, right? We're supposed to say that. Just like we're supposed to
Coin join like
watchtowers, right?
we all run watchtowers. Yeah, so it's wild. Is like we started resizing channels, and then we ended up making every Lightning node a coin join like coordinator, right? So like this is going to take a while to really take off. We need a lot of the network to be supporting Splice. Once it happens, like suddenly you can make more and more things coin joins like cheaply and easily. And I think that's going to be wild. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I really don't want to be one ready to go code for that. Interactivity is horrible, and dealing with all the errors is going to be a mess. But it is doable. Someone should do it.
I think like one of the key things going to happen earlier that's probably less complicated than coordinating coin joins is if you have things you want to do in your Lightning node. Today you go to your Lightning node and you do the thing. It's pretty much the process. But there's a lot of things where you're like, hey, I want this thing done. I don't need it today. It could be in a week or a month. At some point, I want this thing done. So I think where things are going to move is you're going to go to your Lightning node and give it a list of priorities or timescales. Get this done by X. And then what can happen is if one of your peers does a splice, you can join that splice to take whatever pending stuff you have and just literally add it into the same transaction. And those get merged into one Bitcoin transaction, saving you fees, adding a little bit of privacy, doing all kinds of benefits like that. And I think that's going to happen before you have to worry about coin join stuff. And you know, depending how many people are putting pending stuff up, you can get these chain reactions. Like, let's just say we have like a channel go from that table to that table, over to Justin to me to TBast and over those tables. If he starts to splice over there, and you have pending stuff, you can add to it, maybe splicing with this guy over your channel, he might have pending stuff, and then he can add it back to that table, rather than back to that table. And this can repeat all the way across the room. So in theory, we could get like, you know, 1,000 different nodes adding their splices or channel opens and other details into the same single Bitcoin transaction. And what's crazy is me and TBast don't know any of the people over there. I'm all talking to Justin and TBast, and behind Justin are all these people that he doesn't know either. So you get this sort of like double-blind anonymous like property to it, which is pretty wild. Yeah.
When you're doing the on-chain, like exactly what you described with the multiple inputs and stuff, is Taproot going to be working with this at all? Is this going to look like a one input, or is this going to later down the line?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, Taproot's gonna be amazing. I think like, once we get Taproot and Gossip 2, like what's gonna happen is these splices will look like a regular payment transaction. Like you won't be able to tell the difference on the network at all. That's the big benefit I see with Taproot. You see any other ones with Taproot splicing?
Yeah, no, that's it. But you just have to be careful, like any joint transaction, make sure that you use Taproot everywhere, don't do dumb things. And what's interesting is that whenever you do a splice, you can also add something in and actually add the same thing out. So you can break a lot of heuristics by just playing around when creating your transaction, because you are creating it on the fly and you can decide to add inputs, add outputs, however you want. So any heuristic that chain analysis is using, you can just on the fly try to defeat it depending on what your transaction looks like. So that's going to be interesting. It's going to be a game of cat and mouse, like always. But there's going to be a lot of things that people will build to defeat those, I think.
Yeah, you can even do, so like with splicing, there's generally two main concepts. You can splice funds into a channel or splice it out. You can also do a zero splice where you just don't even change the balance. And you get this pricing benefit, but also it'll reset your database. The database problems I talked about earlier. So suddenly a splice that does nothing can fix your database.
And another thing, since we are showing that Splice does everything and fixes everything, another thing that Splice can do is that you have a channel that is an old channel that is not using Taproot, not using Anchor outputs. You do a splice, and now boom, that channel is using Anchor output with Taproot. So you can use Splice as a way to upgrade a channel to a new thing, and to upgrade potentially also any parameters in that channel. You would use Splice for that. So Splice is really the
Splice in your life.
That's right.
Did you have a follow-up or?
Yeah, that was kind of follow-up. You were saying that having your channels open longer will give you priority routing, but when you splice it, does it reset that factor or no?
No, not for people who are Splice aware. For people who are not Splice aware, yes. But since eventually, hopefully everybody will be Splice aware, for those people it shouldn't.
Yeah, we're gonna pressure them if they don't,
Yeah, ask your local Lightning implementation.
Right. Yeah, Bob?
What does it look like when a splice fails? Is there a default fallback? Does it just go back to the original channel state? Does it close?
No, nothing happens. It's just you were trying to build something, it fails, you just resume the normal channel state as just before the splice. You don't see anything happening, it's okay.
Yeah, it's sort of like a can't fail. What you do is, so while you're waiting for a splice, you keep processing your existing channel, and you have a phantom copy of it in the splice. You just duplicate every payment in both channels. And if the splice never confirms, or you call failing, you just do that forever, right?
Yeah, and the next time you actually want to do a splice, that will be an RBF of that one that is not confirming, and eventually you will have something that will confirm and clear up that state. But you can live your whole life with a pending splice, basically.
Yeah, I put like you got like a new credit risk with your counterparty when there's a splice.
Not
right?
really.
So,
Well, you could.
Yeah, well, but you have locked on-chain liquidity, because you have UTXOs that are in that transaction that isn't confirmed and that are actually not used. So you have some liquidity that is unused. So that's something that you may want to fix, but you don't have additional risk.
Yeah, I think that the key thing is, so if say I have like a half Bitcoin channel, I splice in another half Bitcoin. It's the splice version of the channel is a full Bitcoin, and the old one's a half Bitcoin. As long as my peer doesn't let me spend more than the half Bitcoin, then there's no like actual credit risk. But like as soon as we say, okay, you can spend 0.75, now that's actually a free loan you've gotten that you could double spend out of, right?
right, and that's the JIT splice becomes like one of these like free options or whatever.
Exactly.
To run somebody. This gentleman.
Does splicing help with the problem of stuck HTLCs?
Splicing fixes everything.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You could duplicate it, get stuck in two places at the same time.
Yeah, I could do that.
No, it won't save you for that one.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So we have like Amboss that's like scouring and getting all this data and stuff. If I splice a channel, is it going to look like that channel ID is now closed? Is it the same channel ID? Like what changes as far as the wider network looking at?
So the question is just for the recording that when you splice a channel, what happens on Lightning Explorer is like Amboss. Are they going to show the channel change? Or show channel change ID? I can just answer it. We don't know.
But we talk to them, right? Like you just tell Tony, like, hey, yeah.
Or even my gossip, right? Is it going to show this whole channel is closed, right? Is it going to be a new channel ID on the Splice channel?
In the gossip, the short channel ID has to change because it's the location on the blockchain. What's going to happen is there will both be a channel closed and open gossips and a splice indication in the gossip. And that's for reverse compatibility. With older nodes that don't understand gossip, they'll just see a channel closed and open, but the newer ones will be that. And eventually the old ones should die off and we can get rid of them.
The short channel ID will change, but not the channel ID.
Because it's like, there's some metrics where it's like, here's the average channel age on your node. Is that going to be,
Yeah, that's why we want people to be splice aware and see that this is a splice and update the gossip somehow to reflect that this is a splice so people preserve that history.
Yeah, so contact your local Lightning Explorer and bully them to make sure splices are continuation of challenge.
And other implementation folks, if you can find one of them.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, let's all learn about splicing and let's do it. That's the end of time.
We have time. If you guys want more questions,
Okay.
that much is time. Yeah.
Sure.
I guess once you do a splice, you can't splice it again until it's confirmed.
No, you can. That's